your intuition is constantly reaching out to you and constantly broadcasting to you. It's only when you stop and listen, I'll call it the B channel. The A channel is everything that we can see kind of with our five senses. The B channel is that sixth sense, and that's where you're getting stuff from kind of beyond. And when you start to tune into that and you develop that muscle, then you start to rely on that sixth sense a lot more because you're finding it's more accurate than what you see.
Thanks everybody for watching the Quality Values podcast. I love doing this show. Please like and subscribe. It makes a big difference for me. Also, check out the body lever. I did an episode with Steve Terry, who's the creator of the body lever. It's a really cool device. It's a device to massage yourself. It's basically like a giant pair of nunchucks, but you can use it to lever on your own tissues. Each stick is about 30 inches tall, and there's a 4-inch rope in the middle. And it's got some grooves so you can really work through the knots. Super cool device. Check it out. Go to the link below. You'll get that 15% discount. Thank you guys for watching. All right. Welcome, Bob Regnerus. This is the Quality Values podcast. I'm your host, Jake. I'm excited for this conversation. You do a lot. You've got jack of all trades, so it seems. Author, coach, businessman, marketer. And I'm sure that's just scratching the surface. So thanks for coming on, Bob.
Hey, good to meet you, Jake. It's the first time we're getting a chance to talk, so this could be fun or it could be a complete disaster. But we're gonna let it see. We're gonna let it go where it needs to go.
We're both stuck here.
I'm kidding. It's gonna be awesome. It'll be awesome.
Sweet. So let's dive right into the book. I love the books. I'm working on a book. What was the first book you wrote?
Oh, great question. My first real book was called Big Ticket E-commerce. I wrote it in 2007. And the book was my way of letting clients know what I did. And I developed the skill back in 2005 and 6 to turn Google AdWords into money for people that sold big ticket items. Now, we're going back 20 years now, right? Facebook did not exist. TikTok did not exist. YouTube was just kind of a thought. So Google AdWords was the main platform. So I had a particular skill in that, and I helped a lot of clients through the years do that. And so that book, it's still available. I still think you can order it. It's probably going to be quite out of date, but there's a lot of great concepts and fundamentals in that book. But that book was really cool because a friend of mine helped me write it. And I'll kind of peel back the layers right away. Every book that I've written, I've spoken into existence. So if you want to dig into that, I'd love to share how we do that. But that's what I did. I shared my expertise and created a book out of it.
Yeah, explain what you mean by speaking it into existence. I have a book I would like to release, and I'm hoping it's the first of many. So for someone like me,
Yeah.
a wannabe author, when did you know that you were ready to write your first book? And then how does it come about? How did you speak it into existence? What were the actual pragmatic steps you needed to take to get it done?
Yeah, that's a great question. So a book appears to you. That's the best way I can explain it. You have this inner urge to like create these books. Most authors that I've met, and I had helped people write books for a couple of years, but books find you, and it's really up to you to honor that inner call and bring it forth. In my case, one of the things that I wanted to do, Jake, was get on more stages and talk to people about how to do what it is that I do. And so the best way to unlock a stage is to have a book. And so books are a way for you to get the VIP pass to stages where your clients are. And so the best book that you can write is not necessarily one that teaches something, although all books teach something, but a great book demonstrates something. And so when I write a book, I teach, but I also inspire. And so in that book, I told a lot of stories about the clients that I work with. So when potential clients would read that book, they would see themselves in that story and realize that Bob is the person for me. At that time, I owned an agency and we specialized in working with those types of clients. So it was a really good match. Now, what I discovered was very interesting is that most people didn't take time to read the book. They basically saw that I had a book, they saw the cover, they read the back cover, they looked at the table of contents, and that was enough for them. Literally, it was a ticket and it was a fast pass to not only get on stages, but to work with people. And even this day, people still look at authors as experts. And, people thought that was going to change with the digital ebook and everything like that. But authorship still has that cachet of this person is an expert. And so what I did, and I thought, how am I going to sit down and write a book? Because the blank page is really like, oh, it's awful, right? What I did was I was talking about this idea with a friend of mine, and here's what he did. He offered to write the book for me. Now, here's how we did it. We got on the phone for, I think, 20 different days, about 2 hours each, and he interviewed me. And we recorded the interview, and he took that interview, created transcripts. Back in the day, it was a lot more difficult to get a transcript, like a human had to type it. But those transcripts then were turned into a narrative, and those narratives were put into a book, and then we went through an editing process, just like you do. So the only difference in the way people write books is how the initial word gets on the page, which is a lot of people speak their books into existence. Some people want to write, some people do it longhand. But the idea then is called a ghostwriter, and the ghostwriter captures your voice because your voice is being used in the transcripts. So all of my books have worked out that way, is that I've spoken those into existence, my words into a recording, and then someone or something these days turns it into a narrative. Then it gets edited, then it gets put together and published.
Super cool. All right, so you mentioned something, and we met through Devin Sizemore. He's master connector. He's an
Yeah,
author as
yeah,
well, and he connected me with some
yeah,
other authors. So I've had a few of these podcasts with authors. So I have an inkling for how these processes work. I'm about to ask about, but when you say that you wrote this book to get on stages, I know Devin says the book is like a business card. I'm a personal trainer. I have a
yeah.
personal trainer certification. It's kind of like that too. It's a
Awesome.
certification. It's authority. It's an authority stamp.
Authority.
But it's one thing to just know, like, okay, you've got a resume item, you've got an authority figure in your back pocket. How does it actually work? How do people find your book and end up with you on a stage? Like, what are the steps that typically takes place?
So that book that I mentioned was a self-published book, and then the next book that I created was for a company called Entrepreneur Press. So Entrepreneur Magazine, the website entrepreneur.com, uh, has a publishing arm. It's much smaller now, but here's what I learned. So my first book was self-published through Amazon.com and Barnes and Noble. Put it up there. You are responsible for marketing your book. And so you use paid advertising, you use social media, you use outlets, and the book becomes part of your marketing message. Now, what I thought when I wrote a book for Entrepreneur Press, I'm like, oh my goodness, I have this amazing company that is going to promote the book all over the place. But what I found out is when I wrote this book, I used the same process. I used a ghostwriter. It was called the Official Get Rich Guide to Information Marketing on the Internet, and I co-authored it with a friend of mine. Put the book up, Entrepreneur Press, put it in bookstores. They did all the work, but they ran one quarter-page ad in Entrepreneur Magazine, and that was the extent of the marketing they did for the book. So whether you go through a traditional publisher or you do the self-publishing route, you are responsible for promoting your book. And so just like you think about a social media post or a paid ad, you are targeting your prospects with that particular book and you are driving them in. It could be that you're offering for them to download it. You could be sending them to Amazon to buy it. There's all kinds of ways for people to discover your book, but essentially you market your book as if you would market your service or your product.
And then when does that start? Like, does that start in the idea phase? Do you start
Mm.
championing your book, getting the word out there before it's complete, or do you wait till it's published and start marketing it then once you've got a link to actually drive people to?
Oh, so that's a really great question. And there's a couple ways you could go about this. First of all, you could if you have a mailing list already, so if you have people that follow you, like some sort of CRM, an email newsletter, um, a social media following, you can actually start to let the market know that you're doing a book. Now, you may have the book kind of fully formed in your head, but um, I've actually seen and worked with clients where they're like, I'm thinking about a book, but I don't want to write about. They actually interact with their audience to get ideas. So you can actually write the book your audience is asking for. That's one way to do it. But the idea is, yeah, you do want to start building up some excitement if you have a following. If you don't have a following, you really don't want to be putting too much money into marketing because that's all going out the door. You have no way to recoup that money. So when I say you do pre-marketing for a book, you are most likely going to be doing that to an audience you've already curated online, email, socials, things like that. As you're going through the process of publishing it, when it's done, you've got all kinds of different ideas. You could share pre-releases of the book. You could release chapters of the book, but it's all done to your audience that you've built up. Now, if you have this idea that you're writing a book, Jake, and you haven't built an audience yet, that's when you want to start building your email list. You want to start building followers. The book is going to come later, but you want to have somebody to publish it to. You want that initial surge. So you're not talking about the book if you're building an audience, you're talking about the concepts. You're talking about who you are and what your content's going to be about. Then that gives you the audience later on to make the book announcement. That makes
Yeah,
sense?
yeah, for sure. Um,
Cool.
I want to dive a little bit more into the context, the backstory of the content of your book, the marketing. Is it fair to say your books are marketing books in general?
Up until about 2 years ago. So the last marketing book I wrote was in 2019. 2020 is called The Ultimate Guide to Facebook Advertising, and it was published through Entrepreneur Press. It was my last book through Entrepreneur Press. That book was probably about a year in making. Again, I had a friend help me write that book. I co-authored it with Perry Marshall, if people are familiar with Perry. But when you co-write a book with somebody like Perry Marshall, what I mean to say is that I wrote 95% of the book and Perry wrote 5%. But that was the last marketing book I wrote. I actually, as we are reading this right now, I've literally written the book and published it in about a 7-day time span. And this book has nothing to do with marketing. I've moved into coaching, and we can get into my coaching background. I've been a coach for 40 years, but my professional shingle was kind of hung out about a year ago, and I'd love to talk about that process when the time is right. But what I've done there is I've shifted the book to be more about what I'm dealing with now. And my book is stories of clients that I've worked with in my coaching sessions and some really basic philosophies and tools that I use with the clients. So I'm using it as a free opt in. I also have a printed version of the book that I'm bringing to a conference that I'm speaking at next week. And we're going to use the book during my session to do a little workshop and exercise. So, um, you know, the idea now here, as we're recording this in 2025, you can get an idea for a book and use AI to help you get that book done really, really quickly. Now, I still, if I want to publish this through channels, I'll need to get it professionally edited, laid out, designed. But it's a 82-page book that AI helped me write over a literal 7 to 10 day period, and it's at a point that I can publish the book, and I put publishing quotes, and deliver it to my audience now as a download. So if people go to my website, sparksession.net or thecoachreg.com, you're going to see an opt-in for that book. It's called The Sparks, and it's essentially the story of what I do now. So I've shifted from writing about marketing, which I was in for 25 years, to mindset and beliefs and performance, and helping people create new versions of themselves. And that's what I'm interested in now. And that's what my that's what my current book is about. And I'm working on two other books at the same time.
You got juggling a lot there. That's impressive.
I do. I like to
Yeah,
spin
no,
plates.
I relate. I've got a laundry list of projects I'm chipping away at myself. But I want to jump
Awesome.
into what you're working on now. I think that's always where these conversations get exciting, since that's those are the new fresh ideas. But one thing, how do you write a book in a week? I want to jump on that.
Yeah,
What you said, you use AI specifically. What are you inputting to the
yeah,
AI, and then what kind of corrections do you find yourself having to make, or what kind of guidance do you feed
sure.
into the machine as well?
Right. So ChatGPT is the platform that I use. I know some people use Claude, and I've used Claude. But what I didn't do is I didn't say, write a book. Like, Chat knows me. And even this week, I think it's this week, Chat has opened up its memory so that it knows about you from all the conversations that you had. So I use Chat every single day. I use it as a creative partner, and I use it in a way that I bounce ideas off of it. And that's the way Sam Altman uses it. He talks about, how do you use AI effectively? Use it as a creative partner. Yeah, it could do some grunt work and do calculations and pattern recognition, things like that. The way I use it is I really open myself up and use it as a thought partner. So here's how this book kind of came about. About a month ago, I was talking to a friend of mine, and as you know, Jake, there's so many coaches in the world, and everybody calls himself a life coach or a success coach or a health coach. And so coaches is very much a commoditized business. So when I go to an event, I was at an event earlier this week, and people ask, what do you do? I dread the question, because no matter what I say, they try to put me in a box like, oh, you're an executive coach, or oh, you're a life coach. And I hate being in that box because I don't want to be lumped in with all the commodity coaches. I'm professionally accredited. I took a year and a half to go through it, like a lawyer does or a doctor does. I went to school. I went through a really intense accreditation process. So I'm a professional, but anybody can hang out a shingle and call themselves a coach. They can't hang out a shingle and call themselves a doctor or a lawyer, but they can call themselves a coach. So I have this trouble explaining to people what I do without them trying to put me in a box. And I was expressing this frustration to a friend of mine. And he's like, really, Bob, what you need to do is you need to give them an experience of you versus trying to tell them what you do. And so that's been working in my mind. And then I got on a call with a mastermind group friend. I'm in a couple different masterminds, but I was with her in a breakout session, and we were actually going through an exercise where we broke down what we did, and we were trying to explain to each other, as if the other person didn't know what it is we were doing, to try to explain what we did. And after about 10 minutes, she's like, well, here's what I hear. She goes, the most interesting thing that you shared with me is your stories. Now I know this because I've owned a video storytelling company for the last 10 years. I was not leading with stories enough. And so I had this thought. I got off of that call and I said, you know what? I've got all my coaching sessions recorded. I use Fathom to do my Zoom calls. And I think, about 35 different calls. I put those individually into Chat, created documents of all the transcripts, and then asked it to analyze it, and then anonymize the story so that I came up with 20 different avatars. And so that process was a little bit mundane. Again, I didn't ask Chat to write me a book. What I started with is analyzing my Spark sessions, my coaching sessions, they're called Spark sessions. And I had it figure out kind of an avatar and create a narrative from my conversation. And so what I came up with is 20 different stories that started the book. And then I put 6 concepts that I write about in my newsletter, that I talk about, that I follow myself, and put that in. And so each of those chapters became a canvas inside a Chat. And then I use that to kind of stitch it all together into a document. And again, this literally happened on a Tuesday. And then Tuesday of this week, I put together the first version. I had to make a couple edits, but as of today, Thursday, so we're 9 days later, that book is ready. It's at the printers for my event next week, and it's on my website right now as a download. So chat allows you to go from ideation to execution to end result very quickly. That process, Jake, used to take days and weeks and months because you had to interact with a human being. You had to get a transcript. You had to wait for the transcript. You had to wait for the person to write it. You had to then edit it. And this back and forth process really slowed down your momentum. I'm getting instant results and I can go in and massage it. Now, I didn't just take what chat gave me and just put it in, and I had to work through it. It gets you about 80% of the way there. And then the 20% is what you put into it. But it takes away a lot of the mundane, tedious stuff. And the more you use chat, the more it knows your voice. So what it produced from what I fed it sounded just like me, as if I were going to write it. And that's what a ghostwriter has done for me for the last 20 years as I've written books, is that they've learned my voice and created content in my voice. So a lot of the books that you see are written by ghostwriters. And a lot of the books you see today are enabled and written by AI. Are they fully written by AI? No. Are they fully written by ghostwriters? No. The author writes those books because it's their words and their concepts getting put in the book. So the fact that now, as a creative person, I can come up with an idea and have a finished product a week later thrills me to no end, because now I can turn around and work on another book. I can work on another idea, and I'm not slowed down by the cogs and the wheels that used to take so much longer.
How do modern AI platforms like ChatGPT compare to old school ghostwriters for the specific use case of ghostwriting? And keep in mind, for context, we're in 2025
Well,
here, so things will be evolving.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
This could all change, right, in like 2 months. um, I am not dispelling the role of a ghostwriter. If I were to put together a extensive book like our friend Devin does for his authors, the process is going to be the same. That author is going to be interviewed, and a skilled ghostwriter is going to help get those ideas onto paper. But I do believe, and I'm probably not speaking out of school, that I'm sure AI is helping those ghostwriters do a lot of the mundane work and get them to the point where they get to introduce their expertise in artistry. So what I've experienced has, because I've written so many books, I'm actually enthralled by the process because I'm getting my words back to me faster. And so I can turn around and iterate so much faster with it. Yeah, the technology is not perfect. I still have to do a lot of work to make sure that it fully sounds like me and is laid out like, but the idea of being able to take a concept and have it turned around back to me that quickly gets me to create things much more quickly. And so that's what I'm good at. I'm good at creating these things. And I have a tool now that enables me to do it cheaper, but also more effectively and faster. And that helps me produce more content, better content at a regular pace.
That's super cool. Um, yeah, that's definitely something I'll try to incorporate on my projects. At the beginning of this conversation, I asked you when you knew it was time to write your first book. I'm going to ask the same question about when you knew it was time to transition from focusing on advertising, marketing, to focusing on coaching. Um, I know you wrote your advertising books that got you on stages that maybe,
Yeah.
I don't know if it's fair to say, kind of made you more of a leader figure. Was that part of the process?
Yeah. It was. Leadership is definitely something I've risen to leadership positions for the last 4 decades. Even when I was in high school, I rose up to leadership positions. So, be in a position of leadership, being in a position to serve people and influence people, is one of my core values. It's all about service, and it's all about I would say it's making people more aware, raising their consciousness. But the shift for me really occurred, like many people during the pandemic, it really makes you stop and think about kind of where you're going. And I have a journaling practice. I don't know if you or your listeners do. Journaling is just a really great way to interact with your higher self and to really get clear on things. And I started I started journaling in 2022, um, maybe late maybe late 2021. I started to ask a question about how do I take the skills that I've learned over 4 decades coaching basketball players and the 3 decades of being an entrepreneur and turn that into a different opportunity for me to impact people in a different way. Marketing as a practice, as a skill, is something that is just part of me and I could still do it, but I started becoming less interested in it. I became more interested in the transformation of humans and individuals. And so the reason I believe I started that was of course my experience, but I hired I hired my first coach, I believe in 2005. And so it was actually 20 years of working with a coach, excuse me, that inspired me to, because of my relationship to that coach, it's probably been part of me. It's been this kind of dormant seed in me for the longest time. And I was invited to speak at an event. This will be the third year I'm speaking at it. So in April of 2023, I was invited to speak at an event, and my plan was to talk about storytelling. And about a month before my speaking engagement, my mother passed away. And like many of us, when somebody significant in your life passes away, you start to think about like really what's important. And so the organizer is a friend of mine. And I said, look, something happened. He knew my mom passed away. And I said, this was an AI conference. And I said, I really want to talk about something related to AI, but it's going to be nothing about marketing or storytelling. It's actually going to be about humanity. And so I took that opportunity when I was really raw, really emotional, to talk about humanity and connection and community in the age of AI. And it was a really well received talk. I had a huge line of people that wanted to talk to me afterwards, and a bunch of people were really affected by it. They emailed me. It was a really amazing experience, a very emotional experience. That confirmed to me that I was on the right path. And at the same event on the last night, I reconnected with somebody I was in a mastermind group with about 4 years prior, who does coaching accreditation. And literally, we had lost touch. We hadn't seen each other in 4 years. And lo and behold, he was standing in front of me. And to me, that was just a sign from the universe, like it's time to go. So I committed really at that dinner to work on my coaching accreditation. And like I said, it was about a year and a half process. But it really was me thinking about this and journaling about this. But I believe the seeds were probably planted about 20 years ahead of that.
It's a great story. And this is the Quality Values podcast. The question is, what are your values in the context of your
Yeah.
story? So we're filling the context, and I'm starting to feel the values coming through. You talk about journaling to get in touch with your higher self, kind of shifting your focus to helping other individuals, making an impact, and impacting humanity as a whole. What is the impact you want to make? Like what's your driving force? What do you see that you want to change? Or if it's not a change motivation, what are you trying to improve, level up? How can you help others?
Yeah. Yeah, that's a really great question. The core of what I do, and I realized this pretty early on in my coaching career. I started coaching basketball when I was 16 years old. I was a junior in high school. And that version of me really had no idea what was in store for me. But my my career as a basketball coach was not so much defined by my ability to break down the game in terms of X's and O's. Like I was decent at that. What I was exceptional at was creating relationships with the athletes and helping them connect to topics outside of basketball, about being great young men, about their futures, about making good decisions. And so that is really it's really been part of what I, even when I ran a marketing agency and when I helped authors, I've done so much work inside of the marketing space. The thing that I really enjoyed was having conversations with people about their bigger vision. I believe a lot of people have visions locked up inside of them, and they're living inside of versions of themselves that are no longer useful. And I think the pandemic woke a lot of people up. And I think the conditions that we live in now, it's a very tumultuous time we live in. People are starting to question, do I really want to do this for the rest of my life? Do I really want to have this unhealthy relationship? Do I really want to be like this docile? My health isn't what it wants to be. And so how do you help somebody move from this version of themselves that no longer serves them to a version that does? And when that version is serving them, then they can go and be of service to others. I think the best way to create change on the planet is by working with individuals, and that is the way. I call my newsletter, I call my book Spark. you know if you understand wildfires, a lot of those fires are started by a single spark. um, if you're starting a fire, you need a spark, you need to strike a match. So that spark carries from that one individual to many individuals. You never know who you work with. You never know the impact they're going to have now and in the future. A lot of people that I've worked with, both in the marketing side and the coaching side, have a lot of influence in the world. And when they're fully aligned, when they're centered properly, when they're in the version of themselves that is most beneficial to them, they can turn around and serve people really effectively. What prevents people from being in full service is that they operate in patterns, they operate in behaviors that don't serve their highest interest, and they don't know why that happens. And why that happens is because they have programs running that are embedded in their subconscious. I call it their BS. And it's a double entendre in purpose, right? It's bullshit, but it's also your belief story. Most of us operate from belief stories that were inputted into us before we were even aware. And so the unhealthy habits and the patterns that show up in our life over and over are a cause of a BS. And I say you need to confront your BS. What is the belief story that's producing these thoughts, that is producing these actions, that is producing these results in our life? A lot of people will describe their life as they keep coming back to the same thing. Maybe they're caught in an addiction. Maybe they're caught in a series of bad relationships, or they have this roller coaster up and down, yo-yoing weight, or, things like that. It's not because they're doing the wrong things. It's because they have a belief system or a belief story that they've attached to. And my work now is helping them bring awareness, being in a mirror to them so they could see those behaviors. They could identify them and choose a different belief story. They can literally replace one belief story with another that then influences their thinking on a daily basis. It influences their behaviors. And when you change your beliefs, when you change your thinking, you change your actions, you will produce different results. And that's what I love doing with people, is if I can help them get out of belief systems that no longer serve them and get them into belief stories that serve their highest purpose, they can turn around and serve their world of influence, right? And that's how the world becomes a better place. That's what motivates me, is my ability to sit with somebody, read them, intuitively have a conversation with them, just like we're doing now, and just really tapping into the best and highest version of them, reminding them of who they are, and helping them work towards that new reality.
And so uh, when you're helping someone challenge their own BS, overcome their own BS, their own belief systems, um, there's definitely an aspect of like people want to, or they need to want to change before they actually change, right? So
Yeah.
when you're working with someone, and you mentioned the pandemic and how sometimes external events can kind of shake up your reality to the point where you're confronted with the need to change rather than arriving at that desire.
Yeah.
But without something external shaking it up, how do you as a coach go in and and work with these individuals to help them see their BS for what it is, and move in a direction to overcome it, move past it?
It's a great question. Nobody's ready until they choose to be ready. And here's what happens. You are a wonderfully amazing individual. And the reality that exists outside of your body, everything you come in contact with, everyone you come in contact with, is mirroring back to you who you currently are. And so if you find yourself, let's just go with the relationship blade. If you find yourself unable to have a really loving and productive relationship with somebody, let's say romantic relationship, and you're going through a series of relationships that just never pan out, at some point you're gonna literally say, wait a minute, this is not good. And you start to say, why do I constantly have this type of boyfriend, this type of girlfriend, whatever it is? Why do I get in these relationships? Why do I attract this type of person? That is the moment of awareness. And what people will say is, oh, well, I need to think differently. Like the whole personal development genre is going to be like, oh, you need to change your thoughts and then you're going to change your results. But they never do the work where they go back and actually change what is the belief causing those thoughts, right? And so the idea here is, when you look in the mirror and you decide that your current reality no longer serves you, and make a decision that there's a different version of reality that exists for you that will have a different result, that's when you are ready to do the work. And you don't necessarily have to work with a coach. I mean, you could read a book, you could watch a podcast, you could, like, there are mirrors all around us. You could listen to a song. Let's say you have a string of bad relationships and you hear the right song at the right time. I call that a synchronicity. That song keeps showing up in your life, and for the first time, maybe in the longest time, you heard the words, and that word kind of penetrated deep into your heart, and it said, you know what, I'm going to make a change. And that's what happens. People that are addicted, suddenly there's a point where they decide, you know what, this life that I'm living is no longer, I don't desire it anymore. I want a different life. And they make that decision. It's all about choices. And so the way you go about working on changing your mind and changing your belief systems, there are millions of ways to do this. There's no one right way. There's no one perfect way. There's many ways to make this happen, but it's only ever based on you becoming aware of it and making a decision that you want to change.
All right. So you mentioned these moments of synchronicity. You're taught when you were earlier, when you were talking about your first speech that went really well. You mentioned how that was kind of a sign that you were on the right path and
Yeah.
shifting into to stages and coaching. Do you do you try to stay in tune to call it your gut? Like in that sense, are you making a lot of your decisions based on how your body responds to the results that you go through?
Yeah, and it's going to be different for everybody, Jake. And people are going to inherently know, you're likely wired in one of three ways. There's the logical person, right? The logical person will often use analysis, and so they'll kind of be in their mind. Another way people make decisions is from their heart. And so it'll be driven kind of like a heart based feeling. And then there's people that make a decision from their gut. I don't know if you can see that. So there's three decision centers, and you're going to have one that is dominant for you, and it's the way you make decisions. So for me, I am a gut level person, um, and I have this ability to kind of face a decision, and especially if it's a yes no, my gut will give me a yes or give me a no. Some people will be like, what do they feel in their heart? And some people will just say, like, what are the facts? And no one's different. I'm saying no one's better, no one's worse. But you need to understand the lens with which you make decisions. So for me, it's a constant feeling of yes or no. And that's how I navigate. And it's really about being in tune with it. It's very much like a muscle. If you don't use a muscle, it shrinks, it gets atrophied, right? So you have to exercise that muscle. We call it intuition, right? It's kind of the sixth sense. It's your internal teacher. So the more that you tune into your internal teacher, it will start to inform you in the way that you were designed and the way that you make decisions. And so it's not just what do I see, what do I hear, what do I taste, right? It's more about I see it, I have that data, but also what's coming from the inside. And so, people that call themselves enlightened or more awake will say, oh, but it's really it's magical, but it's not. It's really just realizing that you're more than just a body, that you're a soul, you're a body and a mind. That's this system that works together. And so you could tap into your mind, you could tap into your soul. And it's kind of like, have you ever been in a room where there's a TV playing and you're like you're working, and then all of a sudden you're aware of the television? Well, you were ignoring the fact that that television went on. You're kind of heard it as noise, but maybe you stopped working for a minute and you turned your attention to it. That's kind of what your intuition is like, is that your intuition is constantly reaching out to you and constantly broadcasting to you. It's only when you stop and listen. I'll call it the B channel. The A channel is everything that we can see kind of with our five senses. The B channel is that sixth sense, and that's where you're getting stuff from kind of beyond. And when you start to tune into that and you develop that muscle, then you start to rely on that sixth sense a lot more, because you're finding it's more accurate than what you see in front of you.
Are there times where you feel conflict with your intuition and your logic, where logically it's, oh, I should stay with marketing, I'm making a lot of, I'm doing well, but
Yeah.
but intuitively I know that I belong somewhere else? And is that what are those debates like when there's conflict between your different decision systems?
Well, let me share a conflict that I'm dealing with right now. I have this internal dialogue. My intuition and my conversations with people that I love and trust are telling me that the way for me to grow this business, this coaching business, is not what I've traditionally done with my clients in the marketing space. Literally, I am designing a business that is kind of a best kept secret. And the more that I embrace that, the more attractive I become. That is what my intuition is telling me. I'm going to draw people to me versus push myself out. My logical brain, the brain that helped me write all those marketing books and taught people the fundamentals of marketing, says, no, you need to broadcast yourself. You need to push yourself out there. You need to let people know you exist. And you need to draw them in with a sophisticated marketing funnel. So that is a conflict that I'm working through right now. But I'm honoring my intuition by denying my logical brain at the moment to say, you know what? This feels more aligned with who I am. And I'm not going to create this type of marketing funnel for my coaching business because this feels more aligned. So you are constantly battling what your gut says, what your heart says versus what your logical brain says. So that's what I'm currently wrestling with.
Yeah, that's interesting. It almost sounds like you have to come up with a logical counter argument from your gut to your brain to offset the logical hangups you have.
Yeah, because your logic wants
Yeah.
facts. Your logic says, "Give me the facts, right? Give me the data." So here's how this is currently manifesting, though, is that my logical brain is catching up to this idea because I am being invited to places, right? I'm allowing synchronicity to happen, and you did not reach out to me necessarily to be on this podcast. Like a person that we both trust connected us. And I just had this I had this intuitive hit. I had this intuitive hit, like, I'm going to go on Jake's podcast because you talk about values. And I'm like, there's alignment there. So I don't know what's going to come of this conversation, but I'm going to spend an hour with you and we're going to have this really deep conversation. And if the two of us are the only people that ever hear it, it's going to be beneficial. But my gut says there's going to be a lot more people out there. And perhaps somebody's listening to this and goes, you know what? I want to hear what Bob has to say. And they're going to go to my website. They're going to download my book. They're going to get on my newsletter list. And I'm going to start a relationship with them. Maybe they'll become a client, maybe not. It doesn't matter. I'm going to serve them no matter what. So that is kind of how this goes. And so when I get a message back, I got a message this morning from somebody who I haven't heard from. They're a former client. We did video work for them 4 years ago. And I had no idea that this individual was on my mailing list. And I wrote a newsletter yesterday, and that got sent out. And I heard from him for the first time in 4 years. And he's Bob. I just wanted to let you know that I read your newsletter every week, that I'm following along, and I'm doing the things that you're teaching in there, and my life is changing. And it's like, okay, right? So that gives my brain some data that says, put good things out there. It's affecting people whether you hear it or not. And this person may or may not become a client of mine as a coach. Maybe they'll refer me. Maybe they'll tell people about the newsletter. It doesn't matter. My brain is getting some data now that what I'm doing is working. And so that kind of softens the logical brain going, no, 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 because now it's going, oh, I see. So it's a little bit of the gut instinct informing the brain through the data that it's collecting and the feedback.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. I think about these things a lot. Yeah, I'm always weighing decisions. I'm gonna go by the gut guy, but yeah,
You're
yeah,
a
for
gut
sure.
person.
For better or worse.
Okay. So how has that served you? How did you realize that, and how has it served you?
I'll put this podcast in, for example. I I don't know. I just knew that I had to start this podcast. It wasn't like I read somewhere that if I do a podcast that I'll get X number of dollars and X number of episodes. There was no logic to it. It was just, I got to do it. And I remember I told people for probably over a year before I started it, like, I'm going to start a podcast. I'm going to start a podcast. I decided at some point when it crossed my mind, I felt it in my gut. It felt right. I felt that synchronicity, as you call it. And I go with everything for that. Yeah.
When you started talking about the podcast, did you know what it was going to be about?
The name was different. The name was the JCS show. That's my initials. I've since changed it to Quality Values. But it was always about values.
Okay.
I think it was like the third or fourth episode I arrived at what's still my core question. What are your values in the context of your story? My goal from the outset was to have a topic broad enough that I could speak with anyone, artist, athlete, entrepreneur, leader, scientist, anyone, but specific enough that there's an actual direction for the conversation. So yeah, from the beginning, I knew it was going to be about values because that's the common thread, but it's also something specific, no matter who from the general world you're pulling.
What interests you specifically about values? What led you to values as a platform to talk about?
I'm a big traveler. I remember I came up with the idea to start this podcast. I started a blog when I was traveling in Brazil in 2019, and that was around the time I decided I wanted to do this. And initially, I'd met so many crazy people traveling and heard so many stories. I just wanted to share them. But yeah, I think like when you travel, and I don't know how much traveling experience you have, but especially with like a stark culture difference, like it's a little. If you go to Europe, it's pretty similar, but if you go to Central America, South America, things just move differently. Things feel different, and the first couple of days, you're just struck by all the differences. At least that's how it goes for me. It's the food looks different, the sounds on the streets are different, it smells different, everything, but if you spend enough time, then you start to see the similarities start to stand out rather than the differences. Everyone has the same emotions. You can, even if you don't speak the same language as someone, you can convey feeling through just expressions and gestures. And so kind of my theory that I'm running with on this podcast is that if you get down to the core, the similarities stick out between people a lot more than the differences. So yeah, this platform
Mm,
is my way of kind of digging deep into different individuals who may on the surface seem different. You're a coach. I did an episode last week with a biologist, a professor. On the surface very
yeah,
different, but you guys are both talking about making an impact and how impacting one individual can have that butterfly effect and carry over. So this is really what
yeah.
fascinates me. It's like the common patterns that lie in the depth of human values.
Jake is curious about human nature,
Yes.
and you're very observant. And you are manifesting a life that makes it possible through travel and this podcast. And I think the stories you've collected are it's gonna be what your first book is about, isn't it?
I actually wrote a book already. Maybe the first prose book. I have a poetry book, which honestly, yeah, it's
Ah,
now that you say it, it's yeah. I mean, it really is. It's a little more introspective than external focus, but yeah, it's trying to dive into the core of myself. I guess is what I do on the podcast with guests is kind of the process I went through myself through with poetry. Um,
well, it inspires me. Creativity is the way we really get in touch with our humanity, and you are choosing to do what I call lower RPM activities, like writing. Poetry is a really low RPM. Like you can't be frantic and write poetry. You have to really slow yourself down. You have to get in a mental space to do it. I've only written poetry, I think, in college and high school. Um, I've actually used so what I've done is I really love music, and the only I learned how to play the clarinet in like grammar school and middle school. Um, so I know music. I'm a better listener of music than a player of music, but I'm now able to use music as a creative expression using ChatGPT and then AI based music tools. So I've written a couple songs based on really deep introspective personal moments and release songs. So poetry and music is a way to express your soul in a way that is really you're unable to do in so many ways. So I think it's amazing that you're doing these lower RPM things where you slow yourself down, your audience slows down, your reader slows down, and they get to experience life in a way that we don't get to in a society where we're attached to a smartphone and rushing from place to place. So I think what you're doing at your age is really a return to I'll call it the core fundamentals or the core of humanity, which is exploring your creative side, slowing down, and appreciating how amazing life is. So um, just like awesome to you
Yeah,
for doing so.
thanks. And I'm definitely going to think about the RPMs. It's an interest. I think of those things as like axis of thought. That's like a lens
Mm,
to analyze different things through. Um, well, I want to dive back into the impact you want to make a little bit, and it
yeah.
kind of similar to how I asked, like, how does writing a book get you on stage? How does helping one person um, impact another? There's the old saying, like, you smile at someone or hold a door for someone, they smile, and then they smile, and then all of a sudden you've got someone making a life changing or life saving action as on the back end of the chain reaction. But with the people that you've worked with, let's say you've worked with them a while, they start to uncover their own BS, their own belief systems. They start to set new belief systems that are more in line with their true selves. Um, what starts to happen in their life? What starts to happen in their life with the people around them that you see this chain reaction start to take place?
Yeah, I mean, you can imagine. I really I can start with my own life. The more that I've gone within and dismantled belief systems and stories that no longer serve me, my relationships have improved, my health has improved. I'm more peaceful about my business, less frantic. I believe I'm leaving a legacy that of wisdom and wealth that'll last beyond my lifetime. What I see in others who embrace this, I'm connected. Yeah, I used to be connected to, and I, but I'm. I'll say it this way: I'm connecting to different people that value the same thing. Let's say it's going within, spirituality, creativity, curiosity. I'm spending less time with hustlers and grinders, and so my lens of the world has changed, and so I see people differently. I'm associated with different people. um, they say that you are the makeup of the 5 or 10 people that you spend the most time with, and so when you start to change, you're not necessarily going to change the people around you, but you're going to change the people that you associate with. So the people around you will change, if I said that correctly. So you'll probably find yourself in different situations in different groups. So the evidence for me is what has changed in my life and what's changed in the people that I'm closest to. I have friends that I've been friends with for 40 years. But I've had friends that have gone on my life. There's new friends that have replaced them and reflect more of who I am. So it's really about understanding the change in you personally, understanding and seeing the changes in those you associate with. And then again, with the lives of your clients, I wanted to capture this. So, the book that I just wrote and published, it's on my website, The Sparks, is the story of 20 people of what has changed since they had an experience of going within. Yes, I was their coach, and yes, I was the one steering the ship and the process, but it's really the process that I take them through that's the authority. And when they surrender to that process and go within and make new choices for themselves, amazing things happen. Relationships change, businesses change, health change. Like, that's what happens when you go within and make new decisions from a very conscious place. So the evidence is literally in front of us. We just have to see it.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, this is all the type of stuff I love to think about. It's so to wrap up, I always like to ask about the future. You just came out, or it's not fully published, but you've got a new book. You said you've got ideas for other ones.
Right.
What are you most excited
Yeah.
about going forward? What do you see yourself diving into specifically the next couple of years?
Yeah, what I'm really excited about is exploring the depths of my experience with entrepreneurs and athletes. It's been part of my life for entrepreneurship, 3 decades, coaching for 4 decades. Merging those two and creating something new. And for me, it's really targeting entrepreneur athletes, pro athletes that have retired from their sport and getting into business, post Olympic and Paralympic athletes, working on mentoring initiatives with those folks, working on growing their businesses. So I'm really my next book is targeted at people that grew up in athletics, and had an athletic career, and speaking to them and in their language that I speak. It's common language. I speak the language of athletics. I speak the language of entrepreneurship, and I speak the language of spirituality and personal development and growth. My book is going to be targeted to them, so that becomes a signal to them that I'm a place that is safe, but I'm a potential lighthouse or a resource that they could leverage as they create new versions of themselves, as they go through business and life and personal transitions. So that's what I'm most excited about. It's the Entrepreneur Athlete Mastermind (TEAM) team, and that's what I'm building right now and starting to invite people into. So that's what I'm most excited about.
Super cool. I do martial arts and stuff like that, but there's a lot of martial artists, retired professionals and stuff that I know that could definitely use something like that. It's so for anyone
Yeah.
out there, martial artist or basketball player, any athlete, how can they find you? Where anyone who's been interested in this conversation, what would you suggest they check out
Yeah.
online of you?
Yeah, shoot over to sparksession.net. Sparksession.net is an explanation of a 1 hour process that I take people through. Whether you're somebody that's known me for a long time or somebody who just gets to know me, it's a really transformative hour. You can work through one problem, one situation with me and walk out with absolute clarity. And if you want to see if it's possible, the book that I talked about, The Sparks, is a download. It's for free on the website. You can read the stories of 20 people that have gone before you and had an amazing experience. So sparksession.net is the best place for people to go. And there you get on my mailing list and connect with me there. So look forward to meeting a bunch of new people.
And that link will be in the description along with your base website and everything else. But yeah, thank you, Bob. This was a lot of fun. I love these conversations where I really get to go deep, but it takes two to tango. So thanks for tangoing with me here.
It does take two to tango. I'm a terrible dancer, but I'm a great interview.
Well, I'm glad that this is Riverside and not the dance studio.
Yeah, that would not be anything people would want to tune into, I don't think.
Awesome. Well, thanks for coming on, Bob.